So Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. What I see is that both are happening simultaneously.
The scariest part is the concept of a singularity, where you have like an exponentially expanding AI that grows smarter and smarter by the minute. That's mainly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The reality is that AI will become a lot smarter. It already is smarter than humans. So what have humans done? Being the most intelligent species up till now, we've completely dominated and decimated everything. So who's to say that AI won't do the same?
John, would you mind telling us why you have become so interested in this subject in particular?
This has developed over a number of years. I've always been interested in technology and its relevance. And I suppose standing back from it all, I started off as a mathematician and a philosopher of science, being interested in where science fits into the big picture of life. And of course, with AI burgeoning at the moment, that's a very natural question to ask.
Do you think that this advancement, i.e. AI, is distinctive from other advances you've seen in the scientific and technological field?
Well, we've never been able before to simulate human intelligence to such a degree. And that's what AI is at the base. There are different kinds of AI, and we can come to that in a minute. But the basic idea is we need to take the word artificial seriously. A pioneer in the topic who rejoices in the name of Professor Joseph Ray Mellichamp of Alabama wrote a paper many years ago, and the title of his paper was "The Artificial in Artificial Intelligence is Real." In other words, the word artificial in the phrase artificial intelligence is real. It's not real intelligence, it simulates intelligence. And that goes back to what is now pretty well known as the concept of the imitation game, the title of the film about the late Alan Turing, who was the genius behind the solution of the Enigma machine in Bletchley Park during World War II. The imitation game, they're setting up an imitation of intelligence. So you've got a system, a machine, a computer, a big database that simulates what normally requires human intelligence to do, but it's not itself intelligent. We're simulating intelligence, but it's easy to lose that because of the language that's used. Deep learning, artificial intelligence makes you think you're dealing with something that's very close to a human being when actually you're not.
I'd really love to pick up on that language point, partly because we actually use machine terms to describe human behaviors now, so it's inverted. So machines now define some of the ways we describe our brains, hardwired, for example. And I think at this point it's really helpful to bring in some definitions, because as we speak about this subject of AI, I think it's very easy when we think of virtual gaming, AI chatbots that have recently emerged with a great deal of human-like intelligence. I think we really need to understand what we're talking about. So, John, would you mind picking up on a few of the terms that you think are most important for us to understand as we walk into this debate?
Not at all, because I think it's actually very important to distinguish the two basic types of AI. The first is narrow AI, and the second is general AI. Narrow AI is a system consisting of a computer, a database, and an algorithm. That is a step-by-step process that is used by the computer to pick out patterns in that database. Now let's give you a concrete example of that. Take a field where it really is being used to huge positive benefit, actually. X-rays of lungs. Our database is going to be, let's say, 1 million pictures of human lungs, each labeled by top world experts. This lung shows this disease. So that's the database. Now we take an X-ray of Tom Cousin's lungs, and the algorithm searches through and compares the photo of your lungs with those million very rapidly, and it comes out with and says Tom Cousins probably has this disease. Now, at the present state of the art, the result of that will be usually a better diagnosis than you get at your local hospital. So you see, what's happening there is this is pattern recognition. It is doing something that would normally require a human intelligence to do. But when you think about it, for someone to sit down and compare a picture of your lungs with a million others would take a very long time indeed. So that's narrow AI, one thing that normally requires human intelligence. Artificial general intelligence, on the other hand, usually called AGI, is, as the name suggests, constructing a system that can do everything and more that would normally require human intelligence. In other words, we're moving now in the realm of the attempt to create a super intelligence. Now, there are two ways of looking at that. And of course, it is very much the subject of science fiction and hype, but nevertheless, there are serious scientists working on this, many of them. So let's think of that. We're constructing a superintelligence. How are we going to do it? Either you take human beings as they currently exist and you enhance them. How would you enhance them? Well, there are various methods. There's drugs. There's cyborg engineering. That is merging human beings with some mechanical technology like chips in the brain and so on. So enhancement is one thing, but there are other people that say the big problem with human intelligence is it's in a biological package, and our biology deteriorates and dies. Why don't we start with something non-biological, like silicon, for example, and build a superintelligence up from scratch? So those are the two areas of research that are being developed at the moment, and there's a lot of money being poured into this.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, tons of positive benefits. Yeah. Both in terms of like just improving productivity and making stuff easier. But yeah, I think it's mostly positive benefits.
The ability to cut time in half of doing research or summarizations of emails, and I'm doing all work examples, but in my personal life, I've used it to implement plans, like workout plans and structure. So there's a lot of beauty in it, you know. There's a lot of really great potential in it, and I think that it's going to help us move a little bit faster on the technology end.
I mean, I think that it can be a tool to like help the world sort of progress, move forward, especially in more remote places. I think AI can help bring people together and sort of assist where people might have been restricted up till now.
It could be used for like helping with studies maybe, and give inspiration to art, and create illustrations, and inspire in many different ways, and making complex things easier for you and doing it faster. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of positive about like research, kind of like information collection, but there's a limit, I think.
With all this public anxiety around AI, I'd love to hear from you what positive impact you see that could be derived from the AI programs that we're seeing now.
I often say, Tom, that AI, like any technology, is like a sharp knife. You can use a sharp knife to do surgery or murder someone. And the more advanced the technology, the more it can be used for good and the more it can be used for evil. I've given you the example of X-rays. There are a huge number of positive benefits of AI in medicine. Development of new drugs, development of vaccines. All of that has been accelerated by AI, and there are thousands of applications in that area. But let's take another area, crime prevention. We have facial recognition technology now that's so advanced that it can pick out a person not simply from their face, but from their gait, from their rear, so to speak, view. And that's wonderful if you want to pick out a terrorist in a football crowd. But the very same technology, and this is the scary thing, can be used to suppress an ethnic minority, as is, for example, as we understand from plenty of evidence, happening with the Muslim Uyghur minority in Xinjiang in China. Let's take another example, our smartphones. Here we are voluntarily, many of us, like me, carrying around a tracker that is recording exactly where I've been, possibly what I've been saying, conversations that I've had, and so on. And we use it, let's say, to buy a book on Amazon. And then I get a pop-up in a few days' time. People who bought this book would like this other book. Now, what many of us don't realize is that there's a huge harvest of information here, and it's being sold on to third parties without our permission. This is called surveillance capitalism, and it's become such a serious question that there's a leading author, Shoshana Zuboff of MIT, who's written a huge book with that title, Surveillance Capitalism, and governments are taking it seriously because billions of dollars are involved in this. But most of us put up with it without a single complaint. So there's another example of narrow AI raising questions. And then, of course, we get into the deeper stuff, autonomous weapons, swarming drones, controlled by AI, and targeting individuals where the human element is very small. The ethical problems raised are colossal, and the big problem that everybody faces is the obvious one. The technology develops far faster than the ethical underpinning, which is why governments are seriously getting together to discuss regulation, and that's going to create immense problems.
It's possible that there may be a loss of that human connection, human touch that we really kind of need socially as people. I think that's my biggest worry when it comes to AI.
It does things like insurance quotes. It can be quite discriminatory and hurt marginalized communities already. It's got an internal bias in it.
The fake information.
It brings about an interesting question where we don't really know sort of where the line is now between sort of ownership of one's work. Like if you're using AI to create, I don't know, a piece of film or like artwork, like where is the line between it being your own personal piece of work or something that was created by AI?
I think at like a base level, I'm worried about how it's going to affect the economy when it comes to like people losing a lot of jobs. You know, we were even just driving down the highway, and I was thinking, this will be, you know, automated vehicles that, you know, these people that are driving these cars, they won't have jobs. So what are they going to do? So that's what scares me about it.
Well, I think the main thing to be worried about is definitely the risk of superintelligence. That's definitely a big worry to be concerned of. But I'm thinking about AGI. And the scariest part is the concept of a singularity, where you have like an exponentially expanding AI that grows smarter and smarter by the minute.
So John, in your book, 2084, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Humanity, you talk about some possibly apocalyptic anxieties that we have about AI. Can you explore some of these more existential concerns about AI?
Yes, I can, but I think it's important, first of all, to realize that in the nitty-gritty of everyday life now, we've got existential concerns. One of the big problems just with narrow AI is job loss. This technology is taking over many jobs that were done by professionals like lawyers and so on, and doing them well, like writing a will or a contract and all this kind of stuff. And the prediction for job losses is huge. So there's an existential problem at the very basic level. Sticking with jobs, job interviews are now often done by AI, by chatbots, so you don't face a real person, and they discuss with you your suitability for the job. But they're programmed by human beings who may well be biased, and you find out if you're a woman or a person of color, you don't get the job. And bias in AI interrogative systems is a huge problem that people are trying again to regulate. So long before we get to the scary AGI scenarios, we have got real problems. Another huge problem, again with narrow AI that's come up relatively recently, is the deep fake. A little bit of audio of you, Tom Cousins, and a bit of video, and they can make you say anything they like. And there's been a meeting of the Five Eyes, and the head of MI5, the intelligence service in our country, said the next general election, wherever it is going to face huge problems of electoral disruption by deepfake technology, making politicians say what they want them to say and pulling them down, character assassination, all the rest of it.
I think that if there is going to be some kind of robot rebellion, like, it's not going to be right this second. The reality is that, like, AI will become a lot smarter. It already is smarter than humans, you know. And what have humans done? Being the most intelligent species up till now, we've, like, completely dominated and decimated everything. So who's to say that AI won't do the same? Or they might learn from our mistakes and make the world a better place. Who knows? I think AI will create a lot of interesting scenarios for us, and I'm curious to know how humans will figure it out.
Yeah. Society is very based on like convenience, so I think it will be great in that sense. But I honestly don't know. It's hard to tell where it's going to go.
It's like how quickly things have progressed in the last like 20 years, and we just think it's gonna hockey stick even higher. So it's pretty daunting to think of where things are gonna go, for sure.
What do you think we should be expecting to see from AI in the future?
Well, I think that it's worth going back to some of the fundamental stuff, like Huxley and Orwell, Brave New World in 1984. There's an interesting comment on both of those by Neil Postman, who wrote a brilliant book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, I think it was called. And Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. That's the sort of big brother concept, or AGI, that's not benevolent and controls us. But that was Orwell's view. Huxley's view is that people will fall in love with their technology, and they will so love the oppression, which it is, that they will quite willingly undo, I quote Postman, their capacity to think. So Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. What I see is that both are happening simultaneously. We have a kind of love-hate relationship. We love our technology, but we fear what it might do to us. So as we look to the future, I think we're going to see those two strands all the time permeating society, and it very much depends whether enough regulation will be brought in to make sure the benevolent side wins. But that is not certain.
Particularly what we have to be worried about is that right now we have a lot of industrial development that's not really being controlled by anyone. And all the fights to try to align it and make it behave properly are sort of getting overruled by big companies trying to make a profit from it. So I think there's a really big risk right now that if we ever achieve superintelligence, it's going to fall in either the wrong hands or it's not going to be controllable at all.
Who knows? I think it depends whose hand's in it. So it'll go a good way in medicine maybe, and a bad way in warfare maybe. That sort of thing. So it depends whose hands and what laws, I think.
Yeah, I think we just got to learn to work with it, kind of like regulator. I think that's the most important thing.
Do you think AI regulation can solve the problems that you foresee?
I think regulation is a good idea. There's a much deeper philosophical and, from my perspective, Christian thing behind this. If you're going to regulate something, you must regulate it on the basis of moral principles. Now, the next question is, where do those come from? Where are you going to get them from? For centuries, in the West at least, the Judeo-Christian tradition, the Ten Commandments, the basic laws of God, have been the foundation of our state, our institution, all the rest of it. Now, in the view of many people, God is dead. He's been pushed out of the equation. So you're introduced to two conflicting strands. First of all, the relativism. Whatever you say is the morality you want, you go by it. But the other extreme is totalitarianism, where into the vacuum left by the absence of God, all kinds of powerful influencers come who actually determine what is to be done. So you've got relativism on the one hand and totalitarianism on the other hand. And I fear we're actually moving away from relativism and moving into the totalitarian area. Now here's the problem. The preferred and most general idea of ethics, ethical worldview, if you like, is utilitarianism. The maximum benefit for the maximum number of people. So that, for example, if you're dividing ice cream among children, you better give them millimetrically the same or you're in trouble. Now, applying that at the level of the state is what people are trying to do. If Tom Cousins wants to produce a certain AI system and says this is what it's going to do, and John Lennox is a competitive company competing with you, I'll say, look, if you develop that, Cousins, I will do this. That sounds wonderful, and it'll work provided you and I have equal amounts of power. The problem will come when you get so much power that when I say I'll do this, you lean forward and say you'll do what? And you see an example in Hitler. When he was in his political infancy, he made treaties. When he got the power, he just tore them up. And that's the danger we face today. The hardest question to answer, the question that nobody wants to answer, is who said so? And until we have an authority that's central, we're going to be in trouble because the distribution of power is unequal. It was, after all, Vladimir Putin who said some years ago, the state or institution that controls AI will control the world.